Welcome to Feature Please, a hateful voyage of the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
I'm your co-host, Peter.
I apologize for how I sound in this episode. I've had a small technical fault with my normal microphone. I think the cable might not be working. I'm going to try and get that ironed out before we do our live show, which from our reckoning of time is in a couple days. Unfortunately, I couldn't just go to a fucking Best Buy and get a cable because, they're all closed in Ohio. So that's great. But you know what? Through quarantines and what have you, we're still gonna talk about Star Trek. We're gonna talk about Season 5, Star Trek Voyager. Peter, how you feeling about this?
I am really looking forward to doing the Season 4 rip, which will have already aired by the time this airs. I've been doing a lot of back listening to Season 4, and it has become crystal clear to me now just how dominated it was by 7 of 9, to the point where I feel like the entire rest of the series went on hold while we tell the same story about her 15 times. So I thought overall Season 4 was excellent, with some particularly high peaks, but I'm very much looking forward to the kind of the blank slate that Season 5 could represent if we can start going back and telling other crew member stories, and it's not just going to be Seven, the Doctor, and Janeway sometimes.
Well, I got good news for you, in the sense that Season 4 is a little bit of an aberration where they really press 7 of 9, and Season 5 goes back to spreading the love around when it comes to character development, but it's a big deal for the production of the show, because there's actually a huge change between Season 4 and Season 5. And they changed showrunners, right? So in TV parlance, the showrunner is essentially the commander of the vessel, right? They're the ones that is in charge of the production of the show. You have directors for individual episodes. You've got a production team that's kind of your backstop. You've got writers. But Season 5 was a big change because it went from the hands of Jerry Taylor, whom we have raised our fist against in not appreciation on several occasions, and shifted over to Brannon Braga, who is going to be the showrunner for the rest of Voyager's run. And he obviously has a much different storytelling style than Jerry Taylor. We talked, you and I, at length, what probably feels like an eternity ago, but was more like a year and a half ago, about Jerry Taylor. Yeah, the feminine voice, and how Voyager felt different, and how so many of its episodes seemed to be coming from this perspective that Jerry Taylor built into its DNA. And you can think of so much of what we watched with 7 of 9 in particular through that lens, right? Like, it's obviously a female character. There's a very specific story that Jerry Taylor wanted to portray through it. And, we saw that in Seasons 3 and Seasons 4, her mode of operation, what she thought was going to work for the show. We disagreed. We didn't like it very much, I would say, is a fair assessment. But her time is over. Brad Braga is taking over. And it's this first episode of Season 5, I think, is a perfect example of how much different the show becomes as a consequence of that.
This was a very interesting note to start the season on. There's some non-traditional Star Trek sci-fi elements in play that I enjoy. There's a goofy moral quandary we'll get into the second part. But hearing what you're saying, I think it really illuminates a lot of the thoughts I had about that. And tonally, yes, this is a very different creature than what we have seen up to now, until you get back into maybe the Michael Piller era of Season 1 and 2.
I will say, and I don't know if this will be true for you, but among fans of Voyager, people say Season 5 is when it starts to get good.
I find that hard to believe. And again, going back, there was a ton of great shit in Season 4. The second half, especially of Season 4, was so good. I sat back and I'm thinking, like, man, what a great season overall, until I was listening to some of our earlier entries. And I wouldn't say there were like rock hard duds in there, but there were a couple major stumbles in the beginning of the season that I did not enjoy. But Uh, I don't know, man. I think there's enough great Trek in the first 4 seasons to call Voyager a good series just based on what I've seen so far. So if you're saying that 5 is where it starts getting good, I'll be very curious to see what elements are at play to make people say that.
While season 4 had some of my all-time favorite Voyager episodes in it, I think the density of good episodes is greater in season 5 than any season we've done so far. You know what? We will talk perhaps at the end of the episode of what is to come. But what did we watch this week?
Season 5, episode 1, Night.
Well, Brannon Braga actually helped write this one. And I feel like this is, in many ways, him setting the tone for what he wants. And this is a far darker episode, not just obviously in the the
Lighting.
science fiction, the lighting and the science fiction issue, right? Like night and darkness comes into play quite viscerally in this episode, quite specifically as a force, but darker in terms of the characters dealing with psychological issues, which is something that will continue to occur, that their motivations and their development having to do with them confronting things that they have done in the past, or things that are part of their backstory that didn't necessarily happen on camera, but come to the forefront as a consequence of what's going to happen. So,
These are elements that I think we've both commented. And season 4, to be fair, was leaps and bounds better than anything before it as far as recognizing Voyager's own experienced events and touching on pre-established backstories that went largely ignored, if not uh, near retconned. Like in the case of Chakotay, they moved him as far away as possible from his Maquis roots, to the point that in what the not Resistance, what was the fucking one, the Predator Nemesis,
yes.
where it took him the entire half of the episode before he was finally like, oh yeah, this is all old hat to me. I was a guerrilla fighter for most of my adult life.
Oh, well, that episode was notorious for the fact that somehow, some way, he was a man of peace and didn't believe in fighting or killing things. Like the entire time, it's like, dude, you killed Cardassians for fun. Like you were boys with a man who was literally Chucky, like with murder maniac Lon Suitor. Like,
Yeah.
come on now. But uh, I loved this episode. I thought it was great. I see you don't agree.
I loved 60 to 70% of this episode, and the parts I didn't like, I think will still make for some good conversation. I think we can both agree, however, that the beginning of this was fucking amazing. And
Uh, it's your first taste, my friend.
I'm referring to, what's his name, Captain Photon.
Yes, some of the best holodeck content you'll ever see on Star Trek is going to be related to Captain
This is what
Proton.
the holodeck was made for.
Absolutely.
I I'm aware of this story to a certain extent because I played Elite Forces, the computer first person shooter that was a Star Trek property, and there were parts of, I believe, Elite Forces 1, which was still set on Voyager, where you're doing like holodeck adventures. And not having ever watched Voyager and playing through these corny, early 50s, I don't know when Flash Gordon was out, but these weird serialized schlocky sci-fi things felt stupid and annoying. But seeing where it came from now, I think I would have a very different opinion. They've applied this black and white filter to everything, which kind of was like my first entry in the note was like, how, is everyone actually black and white in this? And we'll later find when the doctor kind of walks into the scene and they readjust his lighting elements, like, yeah, this is all stuff that's well within the holodeck technology tree.
So the Flash Gordon serials were from the 30s. And of course, they famously also inspired stuff like George Lucas making Star Wars and all of that, right? The schlocky, like black and white, the hero comes in to save the day. Like everyone talks in an exaggerated mid-Atlantic accent. And the best part is, to me, the guy that they got to play the villain of Captain Proton. So Dr. Chaotica
It
is
was
this guy's.
fucking amazing. I agree with you. Like, the character is great. The guy playing the character is amazing. They've got Tom in there, who I believe this is really Tom's. The first person we get to see is Harry Kim, who appears to be a sidekick that is tied up next to a super stacked blonde that 7 of 9 wasn't enough.
Only Tom Paris would program this lady. Like, yep, there it is.
Yeah,
there it is. That's yes. It was. Of
I
course,
mean, I'm
Harry
not
is playing
complaining.
Harry is playing a character named Buster because he is a Buster. uh, and the lady's name is Constance Goodhart.
Yeah,
Classic 30s name. But yeah, Dr. Chaotica is played by this scene chewing actor named Martin Rayner, and he is an absolute delight. He reprises his role a few times, and he found the line, like, oh, this is what you want me to play, right? Got it. Like 100%.
I'm sure I know the answer to this, and I'm going to lament the fact it's not the case. But is there any chance in hell that Dr. Chaotica ever gets the Moriarty treatment where he takes over the ship and puts shit on lockdown and becomes sentient and his own roving threat?
Not exactly that, but I'm happy to tell you there is an episode where Dr. Chaotica's evil plans are actually a real problem for Voyager. We'll just leave it at that.
Good. That's all I needed to know. They got Tom in there, and Tom, as was pointed out to me by Nate, is less Flash Gordon and more like Rocketeer.
Yeah, he does. He's kind of has that the leather jacket. He does have like a little thing on the back that looks like a
Jet
like a rocket pack. Yeah, he's got a ray gun.
Yeah. And then they go back and forth. Dr. Chaotica unleashes Satan. The robot's name is Satan's Robot.
Satan's Robot. Yes.
Satan's who robot. Portrayed Satan's Robot?
I believe it was Smoldering Catcher Guy.
It is absolutely the guy who portrays Lieutenant Ayala, Smoldering Catcher Guy. This dude gets all the fucking good roles, man. Like, what?
He does.
You
gotta get paid, right? When you don't get lines, you only get paid with the days you show up. So I was like, you want me in the fucking robot? I'll be in the fucking robot.
I've been thinking about Smoldering Catcher Guy, Lieutenant Ayala, a lot lately, and I have to wonder if there was an agreement that he was to never be clowned in an episode. Voyager's security is so fucking terrible, and I did a post on the trauma support group going back and talking about hope and fear. Did you see that one I put up there yet?
Yes, I did.
Like, this is the second time that Tuvok in his completely fucking garbage security division has cost Voyager a way back. And maybe this is something to discuss more in the RIP, but like, yeah, the first time was false prophets with the wormhole to get back. Like, the amount of technology they squandered by letting the Dauntless get out of their control and speed off back to the Borg and that guy to get killed. And it's all because these fucking clown security guys just are fucking terrible, except for Ayala. And I can't think of a single situation I've seen so far where he's got unreasonably so anyways. I think there was one time 7 and 9 went on a war rampage and shot him, but
I feel like he actually ends up being the most competent member of the security staff. If I recall, all the way back to the beginning of season 3, he was like part of. It was him, B'Elanna, and Harry who like crafted the plan to like beat the cave monster or whatever, because he's like an Olympic sprinter or something. Like, we got like a tiny bit of background about him, that he's like super athletic at the academy or something, and he went to the academy. And he is not just never been clowned on, but I would consider him perhaps the most competent member of the security staff. And then
if not the entire crew.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Don't sleep on the Doctor. He's always very effective. Let's not say things we can't take back.
Fair. So they go through this this Captain Photon thing, and it is, I think, the comedy to sci-fi thought experimentation is great. It's a nice example of like what the power of the holodeck technology could really be applied to, and it's a, again, slice of life stuff, which I keep coming back to how much I enjoy. All it's good. It's an A plus plus scene. I love it. And we will find out by a conflict with the Doctor, who has shown up because it's his turn to be in the holodeck, that recreational facilities are in high demand right now because Voyager has found itself in a void, a 2-year stretch of space that is devoid of planets and stellar features and everything else, and they're just flying through complete blackness. There's no stars, there's no nothing. The only light you see outside the ship is, you know, the reflection of the warp reactor or the warp nacelles and some of the other lights. And is this real? Is this a thing?
I think they say that the reason why everything seems to be blotted out is because of background theta radiation. Because otherwise, you would be able to see stars. Like, even if there was nothing for years, as you traveled through space, you would be able to see things beyond that, obviously, because that light is coming towards you. And this is just night because of the radiation is blocking out their ability to even see past this area of space that they're in that has nothing in it. So it's certainly possible, I guess, theoretically, for a section of space to have nothing in it,
Oh.
right? But the fact that it's just pitch black out is definitely a bit of an invention. I will say, establishing that through the shots of the ship in the darkness with just the running lights and like the lights from the windows and from the nacelles was really cool. Like, what, talk about like a neat, subtle VFX effect to really like just set the tone of the episode. Like, that was cool. I thought that was really cool.
Hearing why it's such a dark area and you can't see anything past it answers a lot of the later questions I have, and I don't know how I missed that theta radiation excuse towards the beginning of the episode. So you've got this huge area of space that's completely devoid of anything else, and I think they've been in this part of space already for something like 56 days,
Yeah, a couple months.
and it has had a profound impact on the crew to the point where it seems like it is an optional casual Friday at work. Like, you've got skeleton crews manning all the stations. At one point, we're gonna have a scene where it's just Harry sitting in the captain's chair with his feet up on Chakotay's chair. He's playing a clarinet, and he's the only bridge officer who's present, and other stuff like this. So if you've got a 2-year straight shot where there is going to be no interference and no problems, it's starting to have a real impact on the morale of the crew. Like, I go back to the episode that we saw, the second to last episode of 4, where they had to get through the terrible radiation cloud that burned people, and they put 7 of 9 as the only person awake and put everybody else in cryo chambers. Like, if it's going to be a smooth, easy shot, and it's becoming a real problem for people psychologically, like, you know, I'm always all for putting people in suspended animation.
Yeah, I mean, you will find any excuse to use that Juggalo tech, but
I mean, it doesn't even have to be Juggalo check at this point. They've played the card. They've put the crew into hypersleep. Like,
yeah, why? If you've built, I mean, that was the part of one that made no sense. They suddenly had cryo chambers for every member of the crew,
150.
and had enough space on one deck to put them all. I mean, it was all kind of like, really, really, this is okay. But you've rung that bell, so I think, though, that what I found incredulous was these guys are so used to danger every week for years that the prospect of 2 years of no danger is what's finally breaking them. And that's like, I don't know if that was a meta textual choice on their part or not, but think about it. Like, we joke all the time. One ship imperiling disaster a pay period minimum for your Starfleet non-paycheck, right? That's what Voyager has run up against up to this point. The timing often works out that way. And it's like, oh no, we might not fucking die for 2 years. We're all like losing our minds. Like this speaks to the psychological damage that all of you have suffered far more than anything else.
Real talk on that, and I dwelled on that for a lot of this episode. They will even come out to call it a more like a 2-year vacation, and I think it's Paris that says that maybe.
Yeah. He's the one who's the most chill about it too. He's like, "Fuck it, this is nice. Let's just get to cruise. It's good times."
And we'll even have Janeway later on saying, "I wish we had Borg cubes to deal with." Like, I get they're trying to paint a picture here, and you're not supposed to take all this stuff so serious, but like, man, what the fuck? Like, you guys have been through space hell after space hell, people cutting your faces off and wearing it like a mask, dudes getting assimilated. You've condemned entire cultures to death with your actions.
Yeah, like
Uh,
you just were reminded of those horrors that you have endured, the ramifications of your actions. Like you said, you've had to deal with the Vidians stealing your organs. You've had to deal with the Borg keep trying to assimilate you. You've had to deal with people with shit in their hair trying to fuck your day up. Like every
Erogen hunting you down,
yeah,
8427 giving you like chemical snot. So, for what's throwaway lines, like, yeah, just God forbid you guys are just a regular Starfleet crew for a couple years and nothing fucking mangles you or your coworkers. Like, man, chill the fuck out. And that'll kind of really hamstring this whole episode for me. But I get it. The crew's feeling a little squirrely. They want I don't know. They want the old days back, and everybody's getting cabin fever, which resonated well, I guess. While we're in the middle of this COVID-19 lockdown, that
we've had a lot of like in isolation episodes ever since this started.
yeah,
Um, I get it a little bit, but also like this is they're always stuck on the ship. Like this has been their life for several years now. So like to me, like the idea that they're suddenly like just not getting fucking shot at for a while
oh
being
god, we
so
can't
crippling.
beam down to demon planets and have our
Metal,
bodies duplicated by Terminator silver goo.
I,
Oh damn.
and so I will say that my incredulousness at their seeming desire for life imperiling trauma as much as possible aside, I did like that the episode kind of explored the psychology of Janeway in a fashion I felt was way overdue. The fact that it took to the beginning of season 5 to do this smacked of something like Brannon Braga wanted to do for a long time, and just never got a chance to actually like make happen. And now he's the showrunner, and he's like, it's Brandon's time to shine. Like we're doing this. The the big mystery to begin with is that the captain has not been seen for a while since they started this journey through the void, and Chakotay is defensive about everyone kind of getting squirrely about where the captain is. People say she hasn't left her quarters. Um, he breaks up the senior staff meeting of like, no, she can run the ship wherever she please. Understood? Like it was kind of a neat moment. Everyone leaves the briefing room, and there's an A+ camera move,
Yes.
a tracking shot of Chakotay kind of like by himself in the briefing room, contemplating like how that meeting ended, and then showing him walking onto the bridge from the conference room. Our first like, I think confirmation the conference room is right next to the bridge, and going and sitting down, and it's all done as one tracking shot, and it's really well done, and it's like like his Robert Beltran A+ face acting. Like you see like his like this is some shit. Like I got to figure out what the fuck to do, but the fact that Captain's not around,
You see
this is
the weight
bothering me.
he's carrying in his
Yeah,
shoulders, and I made a big deal out of this too, for all the reasons you said. Like, so the briefing room is basically where the turbo lift was, that was next to Picard's ready room. It was really cool, and like, yeah, Beltrain just wearing this weight after putting on a strong face in front of
senior
the
staff.
the
Yeah,
senior staff, which I would say the senior staff's like pretty far out of line in most of that briefing. I was
Alana
really
particularly. Yeah.
I said Balana's being a real dick in this. I also liked um, Neelix's suggestion that they turn one of the cargo bays into an extra holodeck, and I was like, that Hirogen holodeck floor that they had built earlier in season 4 probably sounded like a real great idea now for some extra R&R. I would have put money on this episode having the heavy influence of some sort of psychic alien or something that was creating either an artificial depression or toying with the emotions of Voyager instead of what will ultimately be just regular human and just the weight of the situation weighing on people's psyches. I think that if we're going to take this as a Brannon's thumbprint on the series, that the removal of Jerry Taylor's signals the end of the Federation issue antidepressants that we have joked about a lot. Like all of the stuff
They
that
ran out.
should have
You
been
can't replicate them.
psychological trauma up to this point that has been completely ignored hits hard here. And like you said, it almost feels like it's too much too late, but I enjoy it for what it is.
It was still welcome. Like they tried to kind of like bridge the gap to why it hasn't been addressed in the scene that Chakotay ultimately has with Janeway, which I guess is the next big item, right? We do see some shots of the crew all kind of dealing with their kind of being bored. Neelix is having panic attacks about his fear of nothingness.
It's nice to
Uh,
see them bust out some new hideous wardrobe for him. Those
yeah,
ugly ass pajamas really were something else. How did that never end up as a Think Geek item? How was that
you
never
know,
merchandised?
we see Tom and Balana having a fight. We see Tuvok has been using astrometrics to meditate because it's the only place he can see stars, and he explains to Seven of Nine why that's important. They detect some radiation, and that finally gives Chakotay a reason to go see the captain. The captain is alone in her quarters, is doesn't have her duty jacket on, is just kind of rocking the gray uniform shirt, and is shrouded in darkness in her quarters as Chakotay kind of gives the information to her, and she's somewhat dismissive. And what we get is Chakotay trying to get her to leave, try to like, hey, come play velocity come play frisbee glocks with me. If you don't want to play frisbee glocks,
This is
crew can really
classic
see you.
Chakotay here. I mean, he's
Yeah,
played this playful card on her many times in the past to great success.
and I feel like they've definitely gave them. I don't know if it was performance notes or what, but like it seems like we have made so much fun of the fact Chakotay always seems like he's trying to fucking get in Janeway's pants, and he's kind of getting cockblocked by monkeys or whatever happens to be the thing that week. This seems much more like I am reaching out to you as a friend and as my commanding officer of like I need you to interact with me and interact with the crew. Like I'm your XO and I'm also your friend, and I'm trying to make that connection. And we get a great Janeway monologue of I have of her regret about the situation the ship is in, and that she made a choice, and a hasty and potentially selfish choice during the premiere of the show to strand the crew in the Delta Quadrant to defend the Ocampa. And she portrays the constant danger that they've been in since then as her excuse for not having to confront this choice that she made. That for 4 years they've been dealing with all of the horrors of the Delta Quadrant, but now they've got nothing but time to contemplate. And now she is forced to contemplate, we're stranded on the other side of the galaxy from everything we know and love because I made a choice in the moment that may not have been necessary because I just felt it was the most Starfleet thing to do. And it was stupid and short-sighted and selfish, and I own every horrific thing that has happened to these people since then, including some of their deaths. And that was just so cool that they managed to bridge to like, why is this happening now? Okay, we have an explanation, and then let's let Kate Mulgrew do her thing. Boom, it was awesome.
The choice to destroy the caretaker array is a cross that we nailed Janeway to on an episode by episode basis for at least the first 2 seasons of this podcast. We pointed out numerous times where the crew should have mutinied against her, and her complete lack of awareness in the situation. And I wish that this scene had happened some point prior to season 5, because I feel like there's been so much more that's happened since then that I kind of have moved on as a viewer. And there's been so many kind of forgiveness points that this seemed tonally like the wrong thing to pin on her at this point, because everything we're seeing in this dark bedroom scene is the complete opposite of everything we've been presented with from Janeway. And I understand why Bran's playing these cards, and I understand that this is kind of like a depression episode and everything, but she has been so headstrong and steadfast and confident in her decisions. She's been such a workaholic. The episode, I think, was it Q in the Gray, where there's supernovas going off. We find out that Janeway had been on the bridge for something like 16 hours. Like, it's hard for me to see her in this state, and to come to find out it's from a decision she made that she has been nothing but steadfast. And I think these are such potent thoughts I have because in Hopes and Fears, the true reason for her to be depressed was really rolled out. We ended season 4 with a amazing throwback to Scorpion, where she makes the choice to help the Borg defeat species 8472. And we spent 2 hours saying why it was a stupid decision, and then we would later come to find in Hopes and Fears when Arturis, Ray Wise, basically tries to murder and says, you damned countless other species to annihilation at
Billions.
the Borg's hands.
Billions of lives.
So having this as your season 5 opener, and especially since when Ray Wise played that card, she just shrugged off the accusation that, hey, you fucked up like water off a duck's back. The right thing to have her crippled by depression in this episode would have been like, my God, what have I done? Like, yeah, I stranded the crew here, but that's 150 people. There are billions of lives that have been lost at the hands of our worst enemy because of my selfishness to save 150 people. So, like, had they shifted her depression over to like feeling that, I think it would have been a 10 out of 10. And again, had this scene happened like the beginning of season 4 or the end of season 3, like it would have been completely appropriate. But it's a good scene. It's a good exchange. Everything is grounded and good. But I think at this point, it really should have been being conflicted over the Borg that had her all torn up. And again, she is like so uncharacteristically depressed and sequestered that I would have bet all the money I had that this is an alien influencer bringing her down. This can't possibly be human psychology actually having an impact on her to this degree.
I agree, of course, that any reference to the spectacular ending of Hope and Fear would have made this scene an A+, because it would have given her a real reflection point as to a more recent choice that she's made, and like allows her to like roll back to like everything else that's happened. But I get that why they didn't, which is this is the beginning of the season. You're hoping to get people back in that stopped watching, and so let's make it as general as possible.
Sure, good
You know,
point. Yeah.
let's make it as approachable as possible to people who may not have seen everything else, and that is, we're still stuck. We're stuck because of this choice I made, and I now have time to contemplate that that's the case. If
I
you're going to
also
do it if you're going to do it that way, this makes sense.
I also like that she is very cognizant of the fact that they've got it really good right now. And Paris had hinted at it earlier in the staff briefing that, this is basically a 2-year vacation, but she really drives home the point that it's just been one thing after another. And I think that it also makes sense that this is why you're seeing Janeway as cripplingly weak as she is, because she knows there's no big deal, and that letting Chakotay sit there at the helm is completely acceptable. Whereas before,
Yeah, you were saying that she's a workaholic. Well, the thing about workaholics is when they don't have any work to do, suddenly they have to confront their underlying psychosis that's making them workaholics. And it can be damaging. People commit suicide in those circumstances in their real life. in the real world when they're like that.
Sure.
And I get it. Like, yeah, she's the kind of lady who spent 16 hours on the bridge because she's dealing with this constant trauma mindset. Getting her people home, getting her people home, and now for 2 years she's essentially unnecessary. And like, except as like a morale person, and we've always seen how uncomfortable she is in that role. She is not like a touchy-feely kind of person. She's not a person who's very emotional in the sense that she's support. She's gotten better at it, but like we saw early on, like season 1, they made a point of showing like where her starting point is with that, is of like, I'm not the people person captain. I'm a scientist. And she's had to develop that role, and it's not natural for her, and now that's all she has left.
I disagree, and I think it all comes to the way that she talks to people. Like, she's the only Starfleet captain I can think of that uses people's first names. She calls him Tom, not Mr. Paris and Balana, and she's very first name. So like in some respects, I think she's a lot more lax and inviting. And we've talked about how her command style has never been like one to chastise and hold people accountable. Like, dudes commit mutiny and shit all the time. She ignores it. And the only time we've ever seen her talk with like stern captain voice was Tom and Balana for dry humping on the on the warp core. But yeah, she did make a conscious effort to say like, I can't be these people's friends and I have to keep my distance. So in some ways she's warm, in other ways I think she's been intentionally distant. But her withdrawing and again leaving the ship in Chakotay's hands, it makes sense. It works.
I
We
feel like the reason why, by the way, that she uses Tom's first name, but obviously they have a very different relationship than everybody else. She's risen him up, put him back in the uniform, put him back in regular service. She understands where he's coming from. They deal with each other a little bit more informally as a consequence, because he's not necessarily a regular officer the same way. But also, the rank structure on the ship makes it so that it would be difficult to differentiate anybody if they just referred to people by rank. So they have to use names.
well, I mean, pay attention moving forward. Like, she calls everybody by a first name. So Chakotay's efforts to get the captain to make an appearance ultimately fail. She shuts him down hard. We pop back over to the bridge, and that's where you get the scene with Harry with his feet up playing his clarinet. Tuvok walks in and busts him, and Harry's like, "Hey, listen, I finished my my new clarinet piece. You want to listen?" And Tuvok's actually like, "Yes," which blew my mind. Because that seemed like prime time for Tuvok to get snarky and tell him to fuck off and sit in the chair the right way. But that really drives home like how bored everybody is with this
Yeah,
situation.
Tuvok doesn't bust your balls for slouching, and no one cares. No one gives a fuck. So he's playing the clarinet. Hey, Jess, shout out to you. There's your boy playing the clarinet. And this is finally. Oh, and I believe Tom is showing 7 of 9, the Captain Proton thing, trying to get her to play Constance Goodhart, because why use a simulated stacked blonde when you have a real one available to you? Which of course leads to a standard 7 of 9. This is stupid moment where she just Borgs the problem away by reprogramming Satan's robot. And that is when finally something happens, which is that suddenly all of the power starts to go out on the ship. There seems to be some kind of dampening field that is shutting down all of the power and literally reducing the ship to night. It's cool effect. Like, all the lights go out inside, you start to see all the lights go out outside, and suddenly everything is in
You
darkness.
could see Neelix's twin hobo trash can fires in the mess hall getting rocked.
Yes, just like raging in their total non-OSHA compliance. Something Stevie pointed out immediately as we were watching it, and we get the crew in different states of surprise for what's happened. Obviously, first you got Harry and Tuvok trying to like get some power back on the bridge. Uh, the On the holodeck, they note that the array has been frozen, so there's still power, but they can't transfer any of the power off the holodeck to other things. He's like using the Flash Gordon flashlight to like look around in this environment.
So
Um,
this the power going out in the holodeck still maintaining like holodeck hologram cohesion, I thought was silly. Whatever, I can sweep that under the
they did
carpet.
they did it so they could have Seven of Nine shoot an alien with a ray gun.
I know, but it's still like, what the fuck? And then they're
They
like,
set that up for that bit.
we can't transfer the power to the other things, and it's like you wouldn't be able to anyways. The fucking holodeck again. The holodeck power is supposed to be incompatible with the rest of the fucking ship. Like,
We're gonna
I
hold
make
that over them for the rest of this run of the show. They put that in an episode. They said that
episode like
specifically.
2,
Yeah, like they
whatever.
set that up. We're gonna hold
Uh,
them to it.
we see them bust out the wrist flashlights, which them like crawling through the ship only further highlights like how awkward it is to have to like Superman fly with like fist forward pointing at things. I hate those fucking flashlights. But yeah, the whole ship's knocked out, and it is a really cool effect when the lights are out and all the background sound effects die, just how stuffy and claustrophobic that ship feels. And I think that becomes a strength to the scenes with Neelix, who is like full blown panic attack at this mode, like crouching in a corner, having a fucking psychotic episode. Like, it would suck. It would suck a lot to be just trapped in space like that. And again, I think they do a great job building the atmosphere in all of this.
They do. They do a great job playing on the premise. Unusual care for production and lighting and the use of practical TV production design. You know, we already mentioned like the camera shot where they did the tracking shot from the briefing room back to the bridge, where it was just done to show the weight that Chakotay was carrying the dealing with this issue. But that is not. I mean, like this episode is filled with innovative camera work.
I would
Like
have thought it was a Frakes episode, honestly.
same. Yeah, like they went so far out of the what you would call the Voyager house style and did interesting things with shot location, with camera location. Obviously, the use of lighting is extremely important, and it's great. Like it added so much to the episode and the ambiance and the subtleties that they are trying to convey that usually Voyager does not indulge in, and it was really cool to see that in full effect.
I don't know what this episode's going to be. I have nothing to work on based off of it. It's just Voyager somehow in pitch blackness for 2 years with the captain uncharacteristically depressed and everybody going a little crazy, and now all of the power disappearing under a mysterious force. Like, if ever there was a time for there to be a Cthulhu episode
This would
of
be it.
Star Trek, like up to this, and that's why.
Instead, it's Captain Planet.
Yes, it is, and that's the big disappointment in all of this, is that up to this point we are running at like peak really fucking cool sci-fi borderline horror, and they've set such an intriguing table. We'll have a flash appearance of others on the ship, and it's a cool, Resident Evil moment where it's, I think I see something in the shadows, all we have are flashlights. Horrific looking monsters that look like shit men. I think they'll be described by Robert Picardo as humanoid Tootsie Rolls, which they nicknamed Captain's Logs.
Nice.
But Tuvok, once they get a little bit of power back up, will fire a torpedo off of the bow as basically a glow stick. And it's funny that I note in my notes that it's a waste of a torpedo, because this is a monumental expenditure of photon torpedoes in this episode.
Yeah, this is definitely where they're like, you have to give up on the idea that they somehow didn't reload on these things, which makes sense, right? Like you would assume after this many years and this many races, I would buy it if they did, like, hey, we ran into a race that had similar weapons, we manufactured a whole new armament, like
we've just been
improved
replicating stuff and using shit we mine.
We've been coming up with ways to make new ones. Just a line of dialogue would have fixed it.
If you knew that was one of the criticisms of your show, why would you have not thrown in it at some point to just, okay, we were able to restock and we built some new shuttlecraft too. Like, such big talking points for the show is gone.
They will
Um,
get to the shuttlecraft thing, believe it or not.
the Going back to Branagh, I feel like this is very strongly within his MO. He does a great job in a lot of different episodes that he has writing credits on. It's almost like Stephen King. Like the build up is so good, and then the resolution or the explanation, or like when the curtains finally open and you get to see behind them, always, not always, but very often falls very flat, and there's a lot of wasted potential and opportunity for what was an otherwise terrific buildup. They pop this photon torpedo, it turns into a glow stick, and we see some ships. That these aren't just space monsters, that this is some sort of a spacefaring race, that they've got gravity wells or some sort of interdictor ability, that they have been able to sap all the power and set Voyager adrift, and they have now boarded. And this is again classic Branagh, like really cool big picture, and then you find out the pushing force behind it, and you're like, that's not as good as it could be. And then you take a closer look at what the details are on that, it all starts falling apart. You're in a part of space where there's absolutely fucking nothing for 2 years in any direction. Where are these space poop men getting the materials to build these ships? Like it
Yeah,
goes back.
what's their planet? Like, what's their civilization? Where do they live? What's the fucking story here?
Go back to what was the episode where everybody was getting terrorized in their dreams, and Chakotay had the moon and he fought wolves or something. His spiritual warrior episode, right? So
He
there's
fought wolves or something. Because
he,
Chakotay's never fought a wolf on this episode, but I feel like it's something he should have done by this point. It's like,
but you had the
why
planet
not,
full of
right?
space vampires, right? That were like so
Yes.
powerful with their psychics that they could like snare ships light years away and bring them back. And then we see all the space vampires, and they're laying in a fucking cave on a barren, desolate planet, but they all got like textiled clothing. Like, where are the factories building these? It doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay, so we've got these space poop men who are in like these really tight rubber bodysuits covered in like corn kernels or something, and they're running around the ship throwing acid or whatever the fuck they've got. One of them hits Tom pretty good in the holodeck. Uh, the ship that's completely broken and nothing works. 7 and 9 grabs a holographic gun, tells the computer to turn off the safety protocols, and then fires this energy hologram weapon and stuns this guy and fucks him up. Like, doesn't make any sense. Whatever, cool scene, sure. Branagh not making any fucking sense, but ramrodding a situation. Okay, fine, whatever. Um, they're pulling some shit in engineering. Everybody's looking around, with
Janeway
flashlights.
shows up. She's got a space rifle. She's back in action.
This is where
She
we get
goes.
our episode title. All right, Janeway, who had been very deeply depressed, coming out. Uh, we're gonna call this one "Kathy's Got a Gun" off the Aerosmith
Look,
song "Janie's Got a Gun." Kathy's got a gun. I can
hey,
only
she wanted
assume
to
that
get
she just.
weapons last week. I mean,
I
let's get weapons.
I can only assume she sleeps with this rifle under her bed. She has pulled
Yeah.
this thing out on multiple occasions. Catherine Janeway is too good for a standard Starfleet phaser or even the Type 3 phaser rifle. She is always rocking the 3-barrel fuck you compression rifle. She used it to bust Tom and Harry out of the chute, and now she's there gunning
Yeah,
people
I mean,
down.
after Microcosm, I would also always care. Like, I would keep that shit on my wall. Like, I had to fight people-sized diseases on my ship. I am taking this fucking thing, and I'm going to never ever let it out of my sight. This is
Well,
my
we've talked
sword.
before, and I think if I was the captain of the ship, I would have everybody armed at all times, just because the Delta Quadrant is that shitty.
Yeah,
Um,
always have your space clock. Absolutely, carry your
so
Service 9.
Kathy's got a gun, and she's got a purpose again. The crippling depression that has been able to wash over her in the absence of real work is now gone, because there is real work, and she's got a purpose again. And they start fighting to repel back this mysterious invasive force. When does the scene with Chakotay and Tuvok come up?
So it doesn't happen until after. So the big reveal is that this giant uh, freighter comes in and shoots a bunch of basically flares into the night, and it drives off the Tootsie Roll aliens. And a gnarly looking guy who looks like the dude from RoboCop after he had a bunch of toxic waste dumped on him, like hails Voyager and was like, "You owe me for spatial charges because I just ran off those dudes." And he's basically a space waste engineer. He's like from Space Jersey, and there he's just dumping his fucking toxic waste off onto this part of space. That's what they find out.
So his
And
name's Malox. He says what I think he's part of the Malorn Space Confederacy or something. I love this guy and I hate him. This is some very standard 90s Trek where ugly equals evil. And this
he's
guy,
straight up a Captain Planet villain, dude.
yeah,
Like, he is an evil
Hoggish
space
Greedley.
polluter. Yeah, yes!
Yeah.
I mean, he even looks like that guy. Like, he's
He's
got his space.
balding.
He's
He's
got a space
fat,
pollution ship that
blimp.
he's taking, and these poor natives are being hurt, and only through combining their powers can Voyager save them. Like, it is so 90s. It is so 90s. It's great. I loved it.
So he comes in, you don't know what he's about. And like I said, I love him in that it's nice to see other civilizations out there doing what they can to get by, and they don't have magical Federation technology, and you've got just dudes that are ugly and going about their way and trying to do the thing. It's more classic sci-fi. It's not treacherous Romulans and their sleek warbirds or like honorable Klingon, vicious attack vehicles. It's like it's the blue collar of space, right? It's like most of what you see in The Expanse. So I like that, but on the other hand, it becomes this totally two-dimensional situation. So he drives off the turd people, the pudding men. First words out of his mouth are, "You better pay me." Also, why are you here? There's nothing here. This area of space is completely devoid. And hey, you shouldn't be here. Why don't you come with me? I'll show you where there's a wormhole that'll get us out of here and bop us forward 2 years. It's a really good deal for you, and I'll do that because you're stranded in the middle of fucking nowhere in hostile territory, and here's an uncharacteristically nice thing that you're going to have an offer made by an alien species. Oh, I see on my sensors, you've got one of the Tootsie Roll people. Can you give him to me? And then Janeway says, no, I can't. Just, fucking, I got to look that gift horse in the mouth, right?
Right.
And we're gonna start picking at the scab and seeing what's underneath here. And that's where let's call it the other part of the A plot, the B plot comes in, and this is where the episode falls apart for me, because we've had really good sci-fi slice of life stuff going on, and now we are going to jam this, as you've put it very aptly, this elementary school Captain Planet situation in here that is juvenile at best and downright criminal at worst. As you've already said, these are trash scows that are coming in, that whoever these Malorn people are, that this guy is just Joe the dumpster driver, right? And we are led to believe that apparently his garbage truck ship has more firepower and can outclass the Federation's best Intrepid class, which, whatever, it's not the first. I think 8 times out of 10, the species that they encounter in the Delta Quadrant outclass them across the board as far as technology goes. So, whatever. And this guy has a secret wormhole that only he knows about, and he has been taking the energy byproduct, this theta radiation of his culture, and he has been hauling it out here to the middle of nowhere where there's nobody and dumping it in what he thought was a safe place, minus one indigenous species that hails from the planet of can't possibly fucking exist, let alone make spaceships. And he's been dumping the radiation there, and that they have tried to tell him, stop, you're poisoning us and hurting us. And he ignores them because he is bad. He's a bad man that only cares about money.
And even when Voyager offers to break the Prime Directive and offer him and his race technology that would not would make it so they wouldn't have to create this antimatter waste from their technology, he rejects taking it because it would make it so that he would no longer make his evil space pollution profits. Even though, like, they easily could have said, "Well, you could just sell the information back to your."
Yes,
I mean, if you're that fucking worried about it, like, just why don't you sell this stuff we're giving you so that you
patent
just
it.
stop killing these people? You
It
patent it
is
or whatever.
so fucking he even says,
Yeah.
this would save the people of my land a lot of fucking time. And so this is where the character is falling apart hard for me, right? He's come in, he saved Voyager. He said, "You shouldn't be here. You seem like you're stuck. I'm going to give you a way out of here." If all this guy cared about was the fucking profit lines and margin, if he was really as mercenary as they're making him out to be, he would have just fucking blown or let the things kill Voyager, not given a fuck. Or he would have blown Voyager up himself. This thing's endangering my fucking profit scheme here. I'm going to blow it up. They take him on a tour. They show him everything. He's real skeptical at first, but he's like, "Yeah, no, the math all checks out on this. Even though I'm just a fucking lowly garbage scow driver, you can lay all this super science on me," and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, this all makes sense." And then to monologue in engineering and be like, "Well, this seems great, but I'm a bad guy, and this is going to be, bad for my wallet, even though it's good for the environment." Where they could have just done something and locked him up, or he's just that fucking stupid. Then he goes back to his ship. They get a little hostile with each other. He goes back to his ship, still doesn't just blow Voyager up because now he sees the threat it represents. It's just a silly virtue signaling that doesn't fit at all.
Yeah, it's 90s environmentalist, uh, just grade school level plot. But there are some gems throughout the episode. Let's not, we've summarized all the bullshit, right? So here's the good parts. There is a great scene between Tuvok and Chakotay in the briefing room where they reference their history together, where they have not gotten along, something that we have noted and appreciated that continuity, them referencing that was cool. Of as Janeway tries to figure out what to do I, stop the space polluters or do I take the free ticket out of the fucking void? And it's essentially a close parallel to, of course, the choice that she was confronted with when they stranded in the Delta Quadrant. And Chakotay is getting the vibe of, there's something fucky going on with Catherine Janeway, and goes to Tuvok and say, "Tuvok, uh, there is no one on the ship who knows her better than you. What the fuck is going on with her? Why is she acting this way? What's going on? I need to know. I'm the XO. I know we don't get along, but this is some shit we need to talk about." And Tuvok's like, "Yeah, you're right. We don't get along, but you are correct that there is some fuckiness," and explains that I guess you'd call Catherine Janeway's command flaw is that she takes personal ownership of her mistakes to such a degree that she will endanger herself as a consequence of uh, something that's happened to others. So the example that he uses is when she was a commander on another ship. I think it was the Billings, and says that she sent a couple away team members to survey a volcano and it nearly got them killed. And so she decided to go and finish the mission by herself so she wouldn't endanger anybody else because she felt responsible for putting those officers in the line of duty, which is, essentially like the opposite of Picard, right? Like he had the situation with his girlfriend and had sent her down into danger, and like it's part of the job. You get sent down into danger, we try to get you out, but if you die, you die. Like it's part of being in Starfleet. It's a very lethal profession. Whereas she's like, no, I almost got some people killed, which means I'm putting myself in danger because that's command to her is
Which very
I have to be
highly
willing to do it.
fits what we've seen of her before. There have been many instances,
Yes.
notably Year of Hell, where she
Yeah.
finally flies Voyager. She kicks everybody off and she goes on the suicide run by herself. So classic Janeway.
And I get it, and it's like it's a neat way of like, yeah, so this is her thing. She's very self-sacrificial, and that's what if she's going to angle shoot on this, it's going to be in that direction, and we need to be ready for that. And that was a really cool scene because it was, let's real talk. We got to talk about this, and I need you to divulge some personal information about the captain because it's the only way we're going to be ready. And this is a good Chakotay episode,
Yeah,
I
it's a
think.
great Chakotay episode, and that's a good exchange between him and Tuvok. We get a real good laugh in a follow-up scene where Janeway calls him in and says, "Hey, listen, we got this dilemma. We could just leave things alone and mind our own fucking business and not needlessly murder people, or we can start a fight that doesn't need to happen." And she starts laying the groundwork for what she's going to pull. And she lays this line on him. It says, "Chakotay, there's no one I trust more on this ship than you," which is a complete fucking line. It's something we dwelled on in Hopes and Fears, that she's having all these secret war party talks with Tuvok, as she often does, and completely stonewalls Chakotay out of all these upper level command decisions. So I do believe that she believes that Chakotay is a viable option for captain. But I do not believe for a second that he is the one she trusts the most, especially after some of the shit that they've had go down, specifically Scorpion Part 2, where Chakotay just completely throws her fucking wishes in the trash.
Correctly, as we have determined.
Correctly, to my delight, and creates a unforgivable rift between them. But uh, again, I have a hard time with the rest of this episode. She makes a decision that they're going to stop this bad thing from happening. They're going to pull their planet tier stunt. What this guy is doing is wrong, and that the Federation and Starfleet should be sticking their fucking nose in this situation, which I believe is absolutely not the case. Um, she is going to stay behind in a shuttlecraft once Voyager leaves with the garbage scout, and that she is going to blow up the wormhole and seal it shut forever once Voyager's safely through. There's some mutiny on the bridge where everybody says, "We're not okay with you leaving. We want to stand by you." And essentially saying, "We forgive you for stranding us here. We believe you're making the correct and just decisions," which is totally okay. All the shit we've given Janeway about making the choice, it's not the effective choice to get home. It was a selfish choice. And now that we once again have affirmed with the rest of the crew that it was made on even not a consensus, it was an agreed conclusion. Sure, 4 seasons too late, whatever. And they all decide that they're going to get together and stop this as a group. They're going to try to go through and blow the end of the wormhole up, seal it, and they're going to have to fight this ship to get through at the end. The whole fucking thing's stupid. I can't stand it. This guy, he's a jerk, whatever, but like there's 50 different ways we could resolve this that don't involve going into open combat with this ship where there doesn't need to be. Like, maybe this
It does
guy's a
lead.
piece of shit, but maybe everybody else on his crew is a nice person, and that they're just there because they're desperate for money. They all got families. Like, we're painting this guy as an absolute evil, like the fucking Borg or the Hirogen, just some maybe the Hirogens are, but just, I am an evil Captain Planet villain. Like, no, there's other. You guys are starting a fucking fight. You could fly through, go to this guy's homeworld, right?
And give
Say,
him
"Hey,
the
listen,
technology and be like, hey, this guy was
A,
polluting.
yeah, maybe the rest of the race there are like nice people, and this guy's just a shitty outlier." Like, listen, this dude's illegally done. Hey, Morlorn EPA, this guy's dumping shit, and there's like people over there. Like, he's got a secret wormhole, and he's just fucking poison. They'll be like, "Oh, hell no. Get the fucking Malorn police over there and capture this guy." Oh, you've got technology that we could. Great. Look at all this stuff we've resolved with fucking diplomacy and like thinking, instead of just, let's get in a fight with this garbage scout. Let's kill everybody on board in cold-blooded murder.
I will.
Let's
Let me.
blow up a fucking environmental feature that you have no right to just destroy the space thing. It's like, there's some guy who's dumping trash in Niagara Falls. Well, let's fucking murder him, and then let's blow up the Niagara Falls. That's our right to make. There's nothing we learned from fucking Hopes and Fears that maybe Catherine Janeway doesn't have the Delta Quadrant authority to just blow up fucking wormholes or condemn everybody to assimilation by the Borg. Like, she learned nothing. It was the last episode from the last season. This is the first episode of the first season. They are completely ignorant of each other.
I not as harsh. I feel like she has learned that I have to get my crew home. They need me, and therefore I cannot just sacrifice myself. We've got to deal with this as a group. We got to do the right Federation thing, which is help these people out. Like, yes, I agree that the fact that they run out of time to do more interesting things to solve the problem does kind of suck, but it's all in service of some great like character development scenes and moments in this episode that I don't mind that it reduces to basically a space fist fight at the end. Because
Janeway's like, I
honestly,
want to stick my dick in these mashed potatoes. And everybody else is like, no, you can't. We all have to
oh,
stick our dick in the mashed potatoes. And everybody takes their pants off and they all stick their dick in the mashed potatoes. And then to top it all off, they fly off. They destroy the fucking wormhole. They don't get as far as they thought they would, but they still get pretty far, which, again, for someone who's super conflicted about, like, God, I need to get my people home, like, she hamstrings herself again trying to get out, but it's good character development. I made the right choice. The easy way home isn't always the best way home, whatever. But they don't even like say like, all right, well, let's go. We've collapsed this celestial feature. We've murdered people. We know about a grave injustice. We also know about a whole society that could really benefit from our technology. Like, let's go out of our way to. Do they ever go and find the Malorn homeworld and give this great technology that would do them like tons of favors?
that's my knowledge,
Oh, look at
unfortunately.
that! Look at that,
Uh, I do.
Brannon.
Let's not, by the way, skate over the fact that there's probably the most like intense firefight shot from VFX perspective of
Oh
Voyager,
yeah.
like firing off like 4 phaser arrays at the same
Mm-hmm.
time and like rapid fire shooting torpedoes. It's like the most competent we've ever seen the ship actually shown as a combatant.
Not
It's like
fighting Species 8472, not fighting the Hirogen,
not
not
fighting the
fighting fucking
Borg.
Borg Cube. The most
Yeah.
intense and white knuckle fist fight we've ever seen Voyager is with a fucking garbage truck.
That's true.
It's
And then the
Bram Brown,
episode
man.
just
Like again, it's like the
yeah.
big picture is great, and then you get into the details, and it's just
Yeah, wet fart
I
ending
loved.
as usual. As usual, just like they get through it, they see the stars, and Kathy's like, "All right, let's go." And then the episode's over. Like no even scene to reflect on what's happened. It's just like, and we're done.
Does Seven, who of course has to be the star of Voyager now, I see she's got her own brand new workstation that is directly in between Chakotay and Janeway. Has that station always been there?
Yeah, she's used it before too.
All right, well
In
that makes a
season
little bit of
4,
sense.
she used it. Yeah,
I will say my other parting thoughts on this is that Harry's new haircut sucks.
I'll be honest with you. Didn't even notice. Didn't, doughy Asian boys, they just all look the same to me. They change their hair.
It's racist.
What are we watching
There, you
next
got
week?
some Patreon material now to give people. This was a really good episode. I loved everything up to the point that and again, you hit you framed it perfectly. This fucking Captain Planet nonsense.
Yeah,
This guy
it's what
could have
it
been a
was.
two-dimensional piece of shit, and they could have done the Starfleet Federation thing and like diplomacied their way around it. Instead, we've got this ridiculous firefight and wormhole being destroyed and everything else. Like wasted potential. This is a great encapsulation of Voyager. Excellent potential, wasted opportunity.
I don't
Some
think it
really
was
cool
wasted.
take.
I don't think it was wasted. To say it was wasted would say that there's nothing came of value of this. There was a lot in this episode that was very good. That I came away like, despite the fact that the last 15 minutes are just kind of crap, like the rest of it was really good. Like there was so much depth to
Yeah.
what you got performance wise out of people that you don't normally see, and I felt like the production of the episode itself in trying to do some things they don't normally do was great. And yeah, whatever. There's a crappy Captain Planet ending. Fine. Fuck it. I'll take it. I'll take that 10 times out of 10 if you mean I'm going to get like actual good scenes between these characters where they're going to have actual personalities and an actual character development and continuity and self-reflection and all this other stuff. give me all of the garbage scows that they're going to fight with 18 torpedoes, if that's what I'm going to get in the end.
The wasted potential here is that it was just a good episode when they set the table for what could have been a amazing episode.
Fair point. I will agree with you there.
Yeah.
What did we watch? What are we watching
certainly, next week we're going into season 5, episode 2, Drone. And we have kind of what looks like Paris, maybe, with some assimilation Borg shit going on. It says, after an away team mission shuttle is caught in a blast, the Doctor's mobile emitter is infected with 7 of 9's nanoprobes, the triumphant return of space pixie dust. You made strong claims back in the beginning of season 4 that Borg nanoprobes were going to be a weekly occurrence. I was going to point out to you that you were wrong, that we barely saw them, maybe 3 times at the most. But I see now season 5 is the true layer of the nanoprobes.
I guess I was a little ahead of my time there. I sometimes the 7 of 9 seasons, I forget when things happen, but yeah, no, we're not all lying to you when you tell you that Borg nanoprobes become the pixie dust of Voyager and solve all problems at all times. And yeah, this is definitely an episode coming up here that'll do that. A few things to handle before we go. First, you mentioned Patreon. First, I want to thank we got a new patron. Thank you to you. I don't want to necessarily out your name because I keep all that private, but I see you. Thank you. And also, we're going to be doing a second Patreon episode. We did our first one, and we released it recently. It was the review of the Star Trek Next Generation Triple X porn parody, which I believe was some of our finest work to date. I am looking forward to doing our next one, and we left it up to our viewers to decide. There was a pretty clear vote for us to review Galaxy Quest, possibly one of the finest Star Trek movies ever made.
Absolutely.
So Stevie is very hyped to watch this one because let's just say she's also a big Severus Snape fan. So it's kind of one of her, Alan Rickman's in it, so it's one of her favorite actors. So we will end up producing that for our patrons, and it'll be exclusive to them for a while before we release it to the public. So if you are interested in supporting the podcast with a couple dollars each month so that we can pay all of our podcast-related bills, we always do appreciate you. We'll offer these extra episodes as an incentive when we can, of course. But anything you want to kick into the kitty is appreciated. Also, big shout outs of always to the Voyager Please Trauma Support Group on Facebook. That is our fan community. If you would like to join, we keep it closed only because we respect everyone's privacy about not having all of their Star Trek shit posting going where their grandmother can see it. But everyone is welcome. All you have to do is apply. You can find it through the Facebook group, the Voyager Please Trauma Support Group. Join us and talk all manner of Trek and all of our episodes and all of that. And by the time this airs, we'll have actually already done our season 4 rip, which we're also going to be our Picard laying into the dirt. So, yeah, I see that face you're making. I'm not looking forward to that either.
I don't even want to talk about Picard.
Yeah, but we will, because we'll make it funny. And so we appreciate all of you that came out to that, since it's now in our past when this will be released. And as always, please like and share and review the podcast whenever you have the opportunity. Spreading the word spreads our audience ever so slightly forward. We always appreciate that as well. So until we see you next week.
I got a little stinger for us here.
Oh my! Is it a rule of acquisition?
That absolutely is. Getting back to our roots, man.
Oh my god!
It's hard to find remaining ones to fit to this, but I got a good one. Rule of acquisition number 62. Profit is profit is its own reward. The riskier the road, the greater the profit.
Well, sometimes it doesn't pay to pollute, Peter. Fly away.
The power is yours. Damn, that might be the episode title instead of Kathy's Got a Gun. The power is yours. That's going to be a hard one.
I guess everyone will find out which one we picked. Yeah.